All right, again, welcome to the virtual career panel, and I will have John start us off with introductions. Oh, John, you're muted.
And I'm liberated from sounds of silence. Hello there, I'm John White. I'm a patent attorney and have been one for about 35 years. Started out as a patent examiner and did that right after I discovered that I didn't want to be an engineer for the rest of my life. So I've got lots to tell you, and it's all been fun. So let's have some more introductions and we'll go from there.
All right, and Jimmy.
Hi, Jimmy Robert. I'm in Houston. I currently work for Baker Hughes and specifically a digital solutions division within Baker Hughes. I run a global sales and commercial organization for that business. Most of my career since actually graduating from LSU in '99 have been in technical sales, commercial, and business operations roles. In a couple of different locations. So that's a very quick background. Happy to get into more of it as we go.
Awesome. All right, and so Precious hasn't joined us yet, but if she does, we will have her introduction later. So now it's just open Q&A. And so again, to all my students in the room, any questions that you have for our panelists, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll get them answered for you. But in the meantime, can you both tell us a little bit about your career paths so far?
Sure. I can tell you that when I went off to become an engineer, I didn't even know what kind of engineer I wanted to be because there were so many to choose from. And the only reason I became an engineer or went to school to become an engineer is my career counselor, coach there, said, hey, you're good at math and science. So you know what you ought to be is an engineer. So there I was. And so not knowing what I wanted to do, I co-opted. I worked for the Federal Highway Administration while I was becoming an engineer. And by the time I got done, I realized as much as I enjoyed engineering, that was not my calling for the balance of my career. I really enjoyed it, but I wanted to do something else. And so the choices were business school, medical school, law school. And I kind of threw them into a hat and came out with law school. And had no idea what a patent attorney was when I went off to law school. I thought I'd do construction claims stuff, maybe product liability. I'm an engineer, I suppose. And then I learned that what patent law was and that the patent office paid for half a law school and I needed to know nothing more. I needed a job at the patent office. So that's how I got there.
Awesome. Thank you, Jimmy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I graduated from high school, decided to study mechanical engineering. For me, it wasn't quite a guidance counselor, but two sides of my family growing up, one doctors, the others were pretty much engineers or oil and gas business, and actually deep engineering ties in New Orleans, even with Tulane University, which probably shouldn't be talking about on LSU call, but my decision was, well, my older brother went to med school. I'll try engineering. Wasn't really sure what I wanted to study, so decided to go through mechanical engineering. As I went through school, I did a bunch of naval architecture, offshore crane design, other things during the summer. It was really detailed engineering work. It kind of dawned on me that I didn't want to do detailed engineering for the majority of my career. So I actually graduated with, back then, there was a minor in technical sales of all things. I really wanted it for business administration, rounding out a business mind more than anything, but that's what it was called back then. And I ended up actually working for, in a more traditional program engineering role for a very short period of time out of school. Decided that really put the final nail in the coffin that that's not what I wanted to do. And I actually joined a leadership program through GE at the time and went through a sales and commercial leadership training program. And that kind of launched my career into a whole bunch of different sales, commercial operations, application engineering roles. And then after that, some operations and leadership of regions and then global teams as well. So that's a quick story for career summary there, how I ended up here.
Awesome, thank you. And you both touched on this a little bit, but maybe some more detail about how you decided or came to the decision to pursue a career that's kind of atypical for somebody with an engineering degree.
Well, for me, it was more serendipity than it was anything else. You know, people, because I go around and I speak at a lot of schools, and people come up to me and they say, you know, I've been wanted to be a patent attorney ever since I was a small child. And I thought, that's remarkable. How would you, number one, even know what a patent attorney was as a small child, let alone want to be one? And yet there are people like that, and I'm not one of them. I kind of went through my life not without direction, you know, I mean, getting good grades and that sort of thing, ambitious enough, but I had no certain outline of where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. And so, you know, it kind of seemed right at the time. And when I got to law school, I went to law school like anybody else, you know, to be a patent attorney. You go to law school for 3 years during the day, 4 years at night, you know, whichever is available to you. You take the bar exam like anybody else. But I thought, you know, if I have an engineering background, really where I can specialize is in patent law, because to be a patent attorney, you have to have an engineering or science background. So rather than compete with everybody, I'll go off to this small cadre of people. And it's not big, you know, the patent bar, as they call it, is only about 30,000 lawyers. And that may sound like a lot to you until you realize that that's not even the size of the Massachusetts bar. You know, there's lots of lawyers every year. The world or the United States graduates between 30 and 40,000 lawyers. And that's probably not a good idea, but there's not many patent attorneys among them, because most engineers are gainfully employed, don't need to go to things like law school and business school and stuff like that, because they're, you know, they're engaged, they're making a good living and so forth. So it's just a very interesting field. There's not a lot of competition. There are some degrees that are better than others. I happen to be a civil engineer. It hasn't held me back. But double E's, electrical engineers, chemical engineers seem to do a little bit better, but everybody does just fine. And it's a pretty high threshold to get into all these things. And then you got to persevere through law school. And then you have to take the exam that I teach people to get ready for. So you take the regular bar exam, then you take the patent bar exam, and the pass rate is under 50% and has been for, oh, I don't know, the last 35 years. The year I took it, though, the pass rate was 27%. So cheer up. It's almost doubled since then, you know, if that puts any wind in your sails. So, you know, I didn't make any decisions so much as it seemed right at the time. And it all kind of has worked out very well. And I can tell you more about the decisions I made after I got into the business. But deciding to get into it was really just good fortune, you know, and don't discount luck when you're trying to figure out your career path.
John, that is actually in the world of career theory, chaos and planned happenstance are my favorite. So chaos theory is just like there's all this stuff happening, there's no rhyme or reason to it, and that's my favorite. So you have some of that in your career path.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I would definitely agree. I think that's part of anyone's career path, especially the longer you go through it, is that there's a component of timing and recognizing opportunities that come up. You know, getting back to your point, John, there's kind of two kinds of people that I've seen sometimes. I'm sure there's more than this, but at least for me, I always make this comparison. There's my older brother who at the age of probably, I don't know, 13 or 14, were catching stingrays off the pier in Mississippi, recognizing that they're in distress and giving them a cesarean section and delivering the babies, putting them in our aquarium. He was going to be a doctor. He is a doctor. He's an orthopedic surgeon. He was always going to be that way. Me, on the other hand, I didn't really know. Sometimes I wake up, I still not really sure what reinvented my career a little bit as we've gone along. And that's why I knew I enjoyed technical aspect of engineering. I knew that was a good foundation that I could build off of that. I knew I could fall back on engineering design if I needed to, but also that it would launch me into other things potentially in the future. And I definitely enjoyed learning how to think, which is really what I think mechanical engineering taught me the most, is really a foundation of how to problem solve, and then taking that into another field, whether it was something in commercial or sales or business operations. I stuck with roles that required some sort of typically a technical component. So I've sold in industrial spaces and power generation, oil and gas, very technical, big equipment, some very small, complicated equipment, software. We led sales teams across the board, always leaning back on technical understanding of product and industry to kind of help put me in the right position to be a strong leader. So I was very much the same case. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I fell back on engineering to give me a broad base. And then as things progressed, I figured out a little bit more what I didn't want to do at a time in my career, and then got into a good lane of sales and commercial, started to learn how to interact in business, and always leaning back and leveraging the engineering degree that I had. So that's kind of, it's interesting on finding your way through, setting the right foundation, then looking for opportunities and kind of feeling your way through your career. That's the way I did it. There are certainly some people like my brother. I've got a younger brother who didn't know exactly what he wanted to do either, but my older brother was from the very beginning knew exactly what he wanted to do. If you're not like that, then you're probably building a base, going to figure out where you fit best, what you enjoy, and then you're going to start pointing your career in that direction and start taking chances and opportunities in that direction as they come up in a timely manner.
Awesome. Those are both great answers. We have a question from the chat. Was your family supportive of your transition away from kind of a traditional engineering role? And do you have any advice on how to talk to your close loved ones about pursuing a career that is not necessarily associated with your degree?
Well, that's a great question. It's kind of funny because when I told my parents I wanted to go to law school, my mother particularly was very disappointed because she didn't have a good opinion of lawyers. And the thing about lawyers is all those jokes that you hear are true. Okay, so let's start there. Lawyers have a certain reputation when they show up in popular culture. It's never a good thing to have a lawyer in your office. For almost any reason. And so, but I tried to tell them, no, a patent attorney, I think, is different. They help people, they help get protection on inventions and help people get royalties and stuff like that. Well, my mom was not terribly convinced. My dad thought, whatever, thought it was going to be okay. But the thing is, it's hard to know how things are going to turn out when you're just starting. And so an engineering education is, in my estimation, probably the best place to get started for almost anything because it's so broad-based, it's so broad spectrum. And at least where I went at Virginia Tech, it was far and away the most difficult curriculum on campus. Engineering wasn't for everybody. It was tough. It required a lot. And if you could persevere and get to the end of that, you could persevere and get to the end of anything. And so whatever was next, you're probably going to succeed at because you weren't going to give up. It's the nature of an engineer. You kind of get knocked down, you get up, you say, well, thermodynamics, I don't even know how to spell it, but by God, by the end of this semester, I will. And you just go ahead. So, I really just headed off in a given direction. Law school was expensive. I will say that. So before you decide to go off and do it, understand you should go to the best law school you can get admitted to, but that also brings up the question of cost. It's a brand you take with you for the rest of your life, where you went to school, law school. But for engineers, it's not as important a question when you become a patent attorney. The more relevant question is, what's your technical background? So, you're in a little bit of a better position there. But I think my parents were most concerned about lawyers, what they were like, and then the cost of law school. You spend a heck of a lot of money going to law school anymore. I mean, it was expensive when I went. Now it's just I'm helping my son through law school. He's going to become a patent attorney. What do you know? And so it's crazy expensive now. So just keep that in mind. But with respect to talking to others, I think they want what's best for you. And that's probably their greater concern more than anything specific that you want to do, unless you want to be an astronaut or, do underwater welding or something. They'd probably say, that's probably risky. So.
Look, I would say the first reaction that I had is that there really is no field that you would go into after going through an engineering degree where you wouldn't use what you learned. Just the fundamentals of learning how to think and problem solve are kind of universal across the board. So that's really going to be applied in any role or any function that you take. I think that's the first foundation to kind of think about this, is there's really nowhere that you can go where you wouldn't apply something that you learned from engineering school. Now, maybe there's different degrees of that, I agree, and different methods if you're really digging into the book and doing calculations, because I don't do a terrible lot of those, but I'm being constantly challenged now in a business around vibration and some of the other things that I ended up probably spending too much time sleeping through while I was at LSU. So everything seems to come back around on you later in life anyway. But look, my family was, frankly, it was very supportive. I think that the biggest pushback I had was not really about an engineering degree or what I did with it, but was more going to LSU, coming from a very deep two-lane family. But my father very quickly got over that after some time, and they were very supportive through school. And frankly, they were most interested in me having a job and being able to be in a place where I was interested in continuing to progress and had opportunities. And I think they started to realize that you fit better in certain areas. And yes, I was using my technical degree not in a manner where I was doing calculations, but I was using it in order to benefit the company I was working for from a sales and commercial perspective. And these two things kind of came together, and then a career path launched from that. So at the end of the day, they were certainly supportive of me having not only a job, but something that I enjoyed, something that gave me some flexibility and also provided for a career path progression. So look, those are the things that I would focus on in talking about that with family. If you find yourself in that situation, it's much less about exactly what you're doing, but the fundamentals that this position will bring and how you can leverage what you've learned to be successful in that. I think those things are much more important than necessarily I had an expectation that you were going to work in a plant or that you were going to do detailed design or put somebody on the moon, and instead you're leading a services team or a business or a software development, whatever it may be. It's much more important to have a niche that you fit in, you enjoy, and you have career progression. And I will say that one of the things, I've had to reinvent my career a little bit a couple of times already. I think at the pace of change that we see, we'll have to reinvent. Folks that are graduating now will have to reinvent their career 2, 3, 4 times over the course of their full career. So being open-minded and flexible to applying your knowledge and your skills and your problem solving different ways is going to be super important for people going forward, even more so than it has for necessarily my generation. At the pace of change, we're going to have to reinvent ourselves. So this is just a discussion that we're going to have, and you got to keep on the front end of seeing where the market and technology are going.
Yeah. Jimmy, you brought up a good point about the skill sets that you have in engineering being applicable pretty much wherever you go. Can you both talk a little bit more about how your engineering background has benefited you either directly in your work or indirectly in any way in your career?
Well, as a patent attorney, for example, when you get your license to be a patent attorney, you're eligible to practice across any technical discipline. And it's going to show my age, but I finished at Virginia Tech in 1983. Now, I'm going to tell you about an instrument that I had, or a device that I had when I entered engineering school. It's called a slide rule. Okay. Now there are those of you who don't know what a slide rule is, but one hung in our engineering fundamentals room, and that was the first thing we used. The following year, we got this thing called the handheld calculator. Okay, my point is technology moves more and more rapidly the further you get into it. And by now, I'm writing patent applications on smart toasters that give your coffee pot a heads up that they've been activated so the coffee can start heating up. And then they tell you to get up. You know, everybody's talking to everybody. You know, you got smart everything at this point. Not that that's a good or a bad idea, but things exist now that weren't even a glint in anyone's eye when I finished at my engineering program. And so engineering gives you the capacity to understand stuff, to be a quick study, almost regardless of the technology being brought to bear. And so it's not just the math and the science, it's the appreciation of all of it, you know, that. And so I've written patent applications on bioinformatics. So bioinformatics, what's that? That's the intersection of DNA and big data, you know, because DNA is nothing but big data. And if you want to try to discover characteristics of a group of people, you have to have unfathomable computing power to pull that off. And then to make it discernible and useful, you got to figure out what the differences are, what the similarities are, get rid of that, and have algorithms that give you data that's meaningful, you know, that you can say, well, this caused that, perhaps, you know, that's bioinformatics. Well, I'm a civil engineer. How on earth did I end up writing patent applications about that? Well, because you're an engineer, you know, you have an appreciation of the basic science, and you just bring that to bear. And so I use my engineering education pretty much every day. I wouldn't say every hour of the day, but at least half of the day as a patent attorney. And it's across any technical discipline. I mean, there's some things I don't work on, like pharmaceuticals and straight chemistry and stuff like that, but pretty much everything else I go ahead and work on.
Yeah, look, I would say that it's given me kind of the foundation, the basis to have a conversation throughout my career. And it's given me the ability to transition from being in commercial and industrial market, mainly around electrical and control products, to then power generation market for probably a third of my career, and really understanding the fundamentals of power generation, at least being able to come to the table with that understanding. And this also awful lot of material science that goes into that role, and understanding our products, and not only how they work, but what makes them better. Not that I knew the detailed design of them, but at least I had the foundation of understanding material properties and why one material will be better suited than others. And then, you know, transitioning into oil and gas industry, and even aerospace, electronics, just across the board, it's been quite amazing the number of different industries, tech and technologies across my career that I've been involved in. And having a technical background and the ability to assimilate a whole bunch of information and data, and be curious about how things work, it just allowed me to come up to speed a lot faster. Of course, I'm not a technical expert. I'm more of a commercial expert at this point in my career, but I know how to have the conversation with technical experts, with customers, or with folks that I need to interact with. And I think it gives the basis of that understanding. So there's just many ways where that has added to also in the problem solving function of my role, and be able to take, I think, just very disparate data and create a pattern from it, and an understanding of where it's going is also a very critical skill that I think probably was born out of running through an engineering degree as well.
Our third panelist has joined us. Precious, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am so sorry for coming in late, but I can answer whatever questions you guys have about Teach for America, or whatever comments, like whatever you want to know about it. I am here for that.
Awesome. So we're talking broadly about having your engineering background as an undergrad and applying it in a different setting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path so far, Precious?
I went on to go to Washington University in St. Louis, here in St. Louis. That's where I'm currently at. And I got my bachelor's degree there in biomedical engineering. So from there, like my last year at WashU, I think my first year at WashU, because I did 2 years there. I met Sarah, who was a recruiter for Teach for America, and I had actually met her because I was trying to find out about Teach for America for my ex at the time. I really hadn't thought about it myself because I thought I was gonna either go to grad school or I was gonna go into industry. So I went up to her and I started talking to her about it, and I told her my past because I had about 4 years of experience tutoring, and and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed teaching. So she was like, I think you might be perfect for this. I think this would be great for you because you have experience tutoring and you have really good grades in your engineering program. That like you should definitely apply for this. So at the time I applied for it and I got an interview. I was really surprised by that. I was like, okay, yeah, this is great, and I think I could really enjoy this. So I started like really thinking more seriously about it, and I went on to apply. I got my interview, I got hired, I got accepted into Teach for America, and then from there I had like almost a whole year to think about doing it. And honestly, the whole time I really didn't think about doing anything else. All I could think about was like, okay, I really want to do this because I would be serving a predominantly Black community because I'm Black myself, and like there aren't that many teachers that are Black, talk less of like teachers in STEM that are Black, especially like teaching math, because currently I teach geometry. So I was like, all right, this would work for me because I really want to do this because I feel like there should be more Black teachers in the field, especially Black teachers in STEM. And I feel like I could be really good at it because I was so good at tutoring for all those years. So I decided to do it. I decided to go for it because I was like, I could always go back to grad school for engineering if I wanted to, or I could just keep teaching. I really don't have a problem with that. So I've been doing that since August of last year, and I have had a great time doing it. There's been ups and downs, mostly ups. It's been a learning experience, but I feel like I'm really good at what I do now. Yeah, it's been a great experience.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So to the whole group, we talked about a little bit about the benefits that you bring with you to your field from your engineering background. What are, for each of you, what are some of the benefits that you each saw in your career field that really drew you to that when you were exploring it versus a traditional engineering industry role? So what did you like and it drew you to this area? I know there's a lot of serendipity in our career paths on this panel, but what are the benefits of these industries and these jobs?
I think one of the biggest benefits is feeling like seeing the impact of what you do. Like I can see it in my students' faces when I teach a lesson and they get it. Right? I can see it on their faces. I can see it in their work. I can see it just like in their demeanor, and I can see it in their relationships with me, how much they interact with me, how much they like me. That is a huge driving force to keep going, to keep doing what I'm doing. And that's a huge driving force, like making me feel like I made the right decision choosing to teach for America. Because my kids are some of the most important people to me in my life. I will do anything for them. I will bend over backwards for them. I will make sure that they get what they need. And I feel like my voice and my presence is extremely important in the classroom because they don't get to see a lot of teachers that look like me.
Awesome, thank you.
And in general, I think just like when you're deciding to, if you decide to apply for Teach for America and you decide to join, when I was applying, a big part of it was because I would share an identity with my students as a Black woman, and like 99% of my students are Black as well. So I share that racial and cultural identity. But like remembering that just because you share those identities doesn't mean you automatically like are able to easily build relationships with your students, because you still have to work towards that. You know, like you can't make the assumption that, okay, I'm going in here and I'm trying to make this impact, but like you still have to work to build those relationships. You still have to work to be good at what you do, and you still have to like get your students to trust you and love you. That's a big part of it. And that's what I had to learn for the past, I don't know, 7 months doing this work. And once I learned that, my classroom became a lot easier to manage, even though it was online, so it wasn't super hard in the first place. But I just like I was able to build better relationship with my students. So the biggest part of doing what I do is building those relationships with your students. Even if you don't share the same identity as your students, like the fact that they see that you make the effort to get to know them and to love them, they will notice that and they will love you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so my what drew me to this to becoming something other than an engineer was I'd taken a course in business law at some point at as part of my engineering curriculum, and so it seemed somewhat appealing. But in truth, the more I got into law school, the less I liked what it was lawyers did. So I finished law school, got a job at the biggest, oldest, most prestigious firm in all the land, and decided after about 8 months that I was not cut out for a big firm. So I decided I'd start my own. So self-employment, that's a different thing, than deciding what you want to do. It's how you want to do it. And so my wife was very indulgent and said, I'll support whatever decision you want to make. And so self-employment was a big adventure, and it has been. And I've been self-employed for about 35 years, I guess, at this point. And about 10 years into that, I decided I wanted to teach more than I wanted to do anything else. And so about half my time, I teach people to be a patent attorney as opposed to doing it myself. So it just kind of keeps growing like a tree. You get a main trunk, and then you branch off that, you branch off that, you branch off that, and you just keep heading for the sun. And you don't really, there's not a lot of conscious decision making or planning. It seems every plan I've made has been tossed aside, and I pursue what seems right. And I hate to keep emphasizing serendipity because I know others out there cling to a plan. And that's good, and I have 5 siblings, and they love plans, and I'm just not that guy. And so you just kind of keep going and having fun and, praying about it. And it seems to work. So there.
Look, Courtney, I would say that what drew me into this was this career path was more, I saw a different opportunity and to spread into different areas than I did necessarily in engineering. My first job was a program engineering role. It was a very long cycle product that the company was making. I mean, extremely long life cycle, 30 year plus. You could work there and see one or two iterations of this product designed. And that's certainly not the case in all engineering roles. But I think that helped me realize that, okay, I want to be in something that I definitely wanted to be in a higher technology role. I wanted to have more interface with people. Eventually wanted to spread into and have the opportunity to lead people and lead them in a business aspect and stretch my brain to connect the technical aspect of products and services with also the financial, commercial, and sales side. So that was really the appeal for me. I felt like there was broader applications in more markets to go down a sales, commercial, and business route, combining that with technical, and also more opportunity to maybe perhaps stretch globally into these different roles eventually as well. It's not to say that you can't do that in a traditional engineering role. You certainly can, I think for me, it just seemed like that path was a little bit clearer, and it opened up the opportunity to do more interface, more leadership on a broader level. And I think I had more flexibility in what I would eventually do. And that's kind of evidenced in being in a really wide spectrum of industries and businesses over the past 20 years.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. So shifting away from the benefits and what your background brought to the table that was beneficial, what are some of the challenges that you faced in applying your engineering degree to something a little non-traditional?
Who would like to go
I'm
first?
happy to answer that.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, look, I would say one of the first things that pops in my mind is that you know there's a lot of black and white in engineering. Typically, you have a problem, you're solving it, there's an answer. It's not the case in a lot of the real world, but also once you get out of the classroom, but also very much not the case in an environment where you're interfacing from a business perspective, and you have various different decision makers that may make decisions based on black and white, or it could be extremely gray. So I think that was certainly one of the things that I had to get used to and be able to read the human interface better coming out of engineering school as well, and understanding that there are certain decisions that may get made that are that there are also things that may occur that are not going to be black and white. They're going to be gray. They're going to take a lot of interface understanding of the people that you're working with, and trying to plug that interface in. I think that was probably one of the bigger things that I had to adjust to, and I think it's a constant adjustment always when dealing with really broad basis of people, is really understanding what motivates them, why they would make certain decisions, and how you connect your value to their need. That was a huge challenge at first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
John, did you say you had thoughts?
Yeah, but then let's hear from Precious. I want to hear on the teaching front from her how, you know, the outgoing effervescence of an engineer works as a teacher, because I have some thoughts about that, but I want to hear from her.
I think it works because I think I'm just naturally an extroverted person in general. The people that I worked with when I was in my engineering program weren't very much that way. So I think I had that.
Right.
It's true. Most engineers are very introverted. They don't really like working with other people. They think they're so much smarter than everybody else. And like, that's just, I mean, you're not an engineer if you don't like, like, that's just the way it is. But I was like, I worked well with other people. I worked well in group projects. And I worked well just like interacting with people because I'm an extrovert. And that translated really well to my teaching, because I could like make the effort and I knew what to do to be able to relate to my students, you know. And I teach math, so I'm like able to modify my lessons and like make it so that students understand why like the material is important for them to learn, you know, because I had to learn why it's important during engineering school. And just like, I think as a teacher, it really does help if you make the effort to interact with your students and engage with this. Even if you're an introvert, like just making the effort makes a world of a difference. And I use a lot of my a lot of skills I learned in engineering schools, in like learning how to convey information to other people, and learning how to interact with other people and just like get along with other people. Those skills I put into my teaching. So I learned how to get along with my coworkers and also get along with my students and develop those relationships that allow us to be successful in the classroom.
Right. And see, that's my observation, is that, you know, engineers classically are inwardly directed and not particularly articulate. either speaking or writing. And it doesn't mean that engineers don't have to have that or don't have it. Classically, that's not their strong suit. They're better at math, science, and all that sort of stuff, but they're not exactly bubbly. And but here's the thing: if you are interesting as an engineer, if you do have a personality, if you do articulate and make and help people understand complex things with just a handful of words, you've got an extra skill set that engineering can support because you're broad-minded, you can assimilate things quickly and stuff like that, and you can explain them. And so don't forget that you have a personality and ambition outside of just your education. Your education gives you tools to then exploit what comes next. And so, don't feel that your education traps you in any respect. It supports you, and it becomes the foundation that helps you reach to other things, the top shelf, whatever it is you want to do. Engineering can help you pull that off. And so, as it turns out, I'm a patent attorney with a personality, and there's a joke that goes with it. How do you, patent attorneys don't have sufficient personality to do tax work. That's the joke about patent attorneys. That creates a very low bar. Okay. And so if you're a patent attorney with a personality, you're an engineer with a personality, then, you can do other stuff and the engineering will just support you in whatever you do.
Awesome. Those are really great insights and will lead into my next question. You get a lot of great skill sets with engineering. There are things that can supplement that when you take it outside of a direct industry role. What skill sets would you encourage students to kind of hone and get if they were to want to transition into your kind of industry? If there's anything beyond kind of, what we were talking about in the last question.
Learn to get along, appreciate what others bring to the table and say thank you. It's just fundamental interpersonal stuff, and that's another thing. Engineers, because they're inwardly directed, can kind of silo themselves off. I mean, a homework group's about as broad as they get. And, if you can expand your horizon beyond that, I think so much the better across the board, because it enriches your experience. I meet all kinds of people that want to be patent attorneys, and I get to teach and stuff like that. I mean, by now, more than half the people I teach are women, and when I started in the field, there were no women at all, just that, that's just the way it was. And now it's more than half. And so that's pretty exciting, I think, to see the industry change in that way over my lifetime. So anyway, learn to get along and appreciate what others bring to the table and say thank you, that's about it.
Love that.
I would say that in addition to what you just said, in terms of like getting to learning to get along with people, like in my profession, that's obviously extremely important because you're working with kids. You have to learn to get along with teenagers. If you cannot get along with teenagers, this isn't really the work for you. Like you have to learn how to get to know them, get to know their interests, what they care about. Because like if we look back to when we were teenagers, like it was very sad when adults weren't really interested in getting to know you and getting to know your interests. So like we have to remember, like we're the adults now, but like that same sentiment still stands. So you still have to like get to know your students and get to love your students. I think that's extremely important. But not only that, you have to come in with the mindset like that you're willing to learn. You're willing to adjust your worldview to make your lessons and your teaching better for your students. You're willing to acknowledge anything that needs to be acknowledged and make changes to your worldview, to your the way you deal with people in general and the way you deal with things in general in order to accommodate your students and show them that you truly care about them, you care about their progress, and you want them to do well. I think that's extremely important. Like being stuck on one particular worldview in general, I don't think is never really a good thing because you never really get to learn. But like being flexible, I would summarize that as just learning to be flexible and learning to take criticism when needed and make adjustment and make changes when needed. But I feel like that applies to really any job, honestly, not just teaching.
Look, I think it's a great question and a good focus to be on skill sets. Getting back to our earlier discussion, if you're not somebody that knows exactly what you want to do, I want to be a patent attorney, or I want to be a doctor, or exactly what you want to do from an early stage, you're probably still going to reinvent and keep the flexibility and adaptability through your career. So really, I think the biggest thing to do is encourage people to look forward a little bit. I still do this at my point in career and say, okay, what are the skill sets that I want to have 5-10 years from now? What are the things I want to be able to do? And then start putting yourself in position to learn those, whether it's from jobs, outside influence, reading, studying, taking a class, whatever it may be. Start to put those skill sets into your toolbox. It's super important. So it's less about necessarily what skills you want to develop, but are you identifying them, the things that you want to be able to do in the future, and then are you putting yourself on a path, or at least putting yourself in position to go learn those skills? So if you definitely want to be in a position where you're going to be leading people in your field, then are you putting yourself and volunteering for things that require a little bit of leadership or influence on others? Or if you want to be transitioning from really a technical role to a role where you're now getting more of a business mindset, are you studying? Are you taking some classes? Are you putting yourself on projects that give you that exposure? If you want to move from doing a role to being able to teach, are you going and gaining those skill sets? I think it's a really good mindset to take early on. And a lot of people I talk to today, they struggle with what they want to do in 5 years, but once you get down to what kind of skills and things you want to be able to do, it's much easier to answer that question. So if you can frame it that way and then walk back, how do I put myself in position to build these skills? It makes it a lot easier. I think this concept of flexibility and adaptability that Precious mentioned is great. I think this is super important for, again, all of us as we continue in our careers and technology changes, the world changes. We're going to have to adapt over and over and over again a couple of times, and your adaptability quotient is going to be up there with IQ and EQ in the future. I think it already is. So it's really about trying to identify the skills you want to build, being curious to go build them, and then adapting when you need to be able to change in the future as well.
Awesome. So I'll ask one final question. What advice, if you have any final advice for students, exploring different career paths, what advice do you have for them?
I can go. I would say that just keep an open mind. Like, I know, like, you come into college knowing exactly what you think you wanted to do. Like, I came into college as a pre-med, honestly. I came into college thinking I was going to medical school to be a surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon, but that didn't happen. I'm a teacher now. I never thought about being a teacher throughout the time I was in college until it was like the year before my last year. I didn't think that was something I could possibly do, but like, you would be shocked what is fulfilling to you, what gives you that drive to just keep going. Like, I wake up every morning and I'm ready to teach my students. I have my lesson plan ready and I know what I'm going to teach them, and I know I'm going to be very happy when I know they get it, right? That drives my day. That's not something that I thought would happen like 3-4 years ago. So just keep an open mind about like what you can do, where you can make an impact. Just because you get an engineering degree doesn't mean you immediately have to go to industry or you have to go to grad school. Like, maybe neither of those things are for you. Maybe you want to go into something else. Like, keep an open mind and see whatever comes your way, whatever fulfills you, whatever makes you happy. Just do it. And don't pay attention to what anybody else has to say, because at the end of the day, like, you have your own life to live. Like, I went into teaching. My mom did not like it. She was very upset because I went to school for 6.5 years, because I did a dual degree program. I did biology and biomedical engineering. So like the plan was to either go to grad school or to go into industry. Then I went into teaching. She's like, you could be making twice as much money. I'm like, yes, I could, but like, I love my students and I love what I do, just like, keep that in mind. Like, that is something that you could really, really enjoy. And you could really feel like you're making like an immediate impact if that's something that's important to you. So yeah, just to summarize, keep an open mind.
Jimmy, you got any parting thoughts here?
Sure, happy to. Look, I would add to Precious and the open mind, and just one more thing: stay curious. I think that's really a critical point. Stay learning, act on that open mind. Be curious about other opportunities that are out there. Go learn about them. See what they are. If they strike an interest, then put together a plan and stay curious. Probably you ended up in engineering for a reason that you're curious around how things work. Keep that curiosity and point it towards other things in life as well, maybe outside of your presupposed maybe career choices. I think keeping a constant level of curiosity and learning and self-development is really important.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add is stay motivated. Every day you got to be ready to go. And not every day is going to be the same, because some days you're going to say, I have nothing but deadlines today. That doesn't sound inspiring, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So stay motivated, stay ambitious, and stay, lean forward, embrace it. And things will go your way. They just do. And all the advice that you've been given here, be curious, keep an open mind. These are vital to, maintaining your attitude and looking forward to things. And so just hang in there. You may not have every answer every day. Like right now, you're pondering, what am I going to do with this engineering degree? Don't worry so much about that. Just keep working and it'll come to you and you'll figure it out. And if you make a wrong decision, you'll recognize it soon enough to fix it. And, you may become a teacher, you may go into sales, you may go into law. You're going to be fine. So have that abiding faith and stay motivated.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. These were all great answers and really insightful. So I think all of our students are really benefiting from this. I'm going to stop the recording now.